Chris Cuomo here. You picked a good night to find me on NewsNation. So I spent yesterday hanging with the fam, avoiding discussion of the holiday at play that no one seems satisfied with, no matter what you call it. I don't know if it was the processing of all the hand-wringing about Columbus and what he actually did or didn't discover and what he did or didn't do, as well as all the theories of his ethnic background that we have to wade through now, or how the phrase indigenous peoples bothers people. Okay, even if they're indigenous people, it bothers them. To me, all of it is another example of what is smothering us, the desperation of division. People who want power and are in power, and the media, right, who kind of can play along with it when it's really supposed to be policing it. This is where they've arrived. This is the best way to get and keep power, is to make us afraid and suspicious of one another. And of course, it's in hyperdrive right now because, as Leland just told you on NewsNation, the election's 3 weeks away today. Harris was in all-important Michigan earlier today, working the working class and working class black vote, arguing that her opportunity economy will build on President Biden's gains and boost an economy that has recovered faster post-pandemic than most countries on the globe. Trump is campaigning on our watch in the critical swing state of Georgia. He's going to be in Atlanta, telling those same types of voters that everything is worse and that during his term it was all better and that Harris is the root of all evil. He'll be speaking on our watch, and we'll dip in if what he's saying is instructive. So I haven't seen a race this close in 20 years, and I get why. Because this is a battle to the bottom of which is worse. And that's where a zero-sum battle to the bottom gets you. Very divided, thin margins, because when people are holding their nose to vote, they're not that enthusiastic. So it's going to be close. And I believe you should thank the two-party system, because that's what spawned this situation and these two candidates, okay? If in watching the conventions, you're like, boy, we used to have such better talent in politics. Yeah, you did. And you know what happened? They got chased out by a crazed, toxic party system and a media that is addicted to gotchas and taking people out, which the two parties are fine with, because all they care about is the other side being worse. And that's where we are, obsessed with personal peccadillos, fighting for clicks and views, and it all forces you to pander to the provocative. And of course, people aren't ready. The people, you, are not ready yet to reject both parties and the whole dynamic and force change, at least not yet. It's kind of the head fake of what MAGA is supposed to be about, but not really, because Trump's about as establishment as you'll ever find. He checks every box. So none of it is a mystery. Look, I don't know who's going to win, but I can put some shape to that for you, and I will in a second. And I should do that for you, because we're in a time of renewed need for transparency in the media, especially about what matters. I'm not saying you need to know everything about my personal life. You got your own problems, right? You don't want to worry about mine. I get it. I get it. But when it comes to what you do want from me, which is information and analysis on what matters in your life and to your family, don't you think it's better that I tell you how I see things than rather just lead you there by suggestion? What do you think? It's an accident that people pick the guests that they do, that the angles that they do, that the graphics that they do? What do you think? It's the only choices? No. Shows make choices based on what they want you to know and how they want you to know it, right? There's always some kind of shading of coverage. You know this. The only real change is that some are just now overtly favoring a side, okay? The power of suggestion there is always at play. That's why on NewsNation, I just tell you, and then I'm free to talk to all sides and come at them as warranted in that moment, right? That's why I called Trump. I am an outspoken critic of his. I believe he has disqualified himself from higher office. But it's a relative assessment, and it's a judgment for you to make. I'm just telling you where I am on it. And I do that time and time again, whether it's Israel, what's happening in a policing case, a murder case. I tell you, if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I tell you about it. Now, this kind of hit me, the need for it, standing in Florida during Hurricane Milton. You know, you people who tell me that it seems that North Carolina isn't getting the attention it deserves, you're right. Do you know why? because the media missed Hurricane Helene. I wasn't there. You didn't see all the big shots at it. So we are now less incentivized to cover the aftermath. We don't own the story as well. We haven't looped you in on it. So we don't. Tonight, I'm going to correct that. And we're going to cover a growing issue that people in North Carolina are struggling with. And we're seeing it in Florida and places that deal with natural disasters more and more. And we're going to outline this party for you, and this problem, and expose it so you can see it in your own communities if it's at play. There is an opportunity in straying from the pack and correcting mistakes that the other media and other leaders make. I also realize that people in my business are more willing to stand in a real storm than we are willing to stand up for what matters in a political storm. I'm not judging. I've stood in many storms in many tight T-shirts, and you can mock that. I certainly do, but be aware of why I do it, okay? I don't like getting wet. I do it because you watch it, and you don't just watch it, you praise it. You love storm porn, okay? So just know that about yourselves. So you can mock those people. You're also watching them. Now, I just wish you felt as much about what people stand for as what they stand in. Isn't that a great line? You know why I can say it's a great line? Because I didn't write it. What you stand for is more important than what you stand in. Do you remember these ads if you were in and around New York? They went national, but my brother-in-law, Kenneth Cole, made them famous. He came up with the line. Now, he was challenging people to become engaged in social issues, to stand for something. That's more important coming from a guy who was in the fashion business than what shoes you choose, which was his main product back then. So it was self-effacing. It was kind of showing that I know what I do isn't that important, but this is what's important. And he was right, of course. But it rings even more true today. It is easy to stand in a storm, okay? It may be stupid, but you can do it. What's hard is standing up about the realities in the Middle East, telling you the truth about how wrong it is, how Jews are being depicted there and here and being treated in America, about phony culture wars where you are being played for suckers, fake facts about COVID and the vaccine and long COVID, rampant truth abuse. More people in the media might start talking the same way and taking the same risks to show you the realities as they do the reality of a hurricane if you would reward it. If you watched that and you respected that the way you do the storm porn. So I'll tell you 3 weeks out what I've been saying since Harris got in this race. As long as this election is about grievance, meaning that the main motivation taking people to the polls on Election Day is what they're upset about, if that's true on Election Day, I see why Vegas has the Trump as Trump's to lose, has the race as Trump's to lose. I see that. Now, doesn't mean it's going to go that way, but it means it likely will. Now, to all of you who say, what? How? Trump is fill in the blank of all these bad things. And I'm not going to question you on just about any of them. I don't like some of the prosecutions. I think that they were done because it was Trump, not because they were a high enough policy for those prosecutors. That's my personal opinion. And that is informed by what? Find me other cases like it. Finding me them going after people like Trump for those kinds of things. You're not going to find it. So, you're right about Trump, but, follow it through. You're right that Trump is very unpopular. That's why the race is so close, because Trump is so flawed. If they had picked any of their other mainline people, my analysis is always upside down from what the conventional wisdom was. I think Nikki Haley would have been blowing it away at this point, but they didn't pick her. Why? Because they're addicted to grievance. And if that's the ethos, then this is their guy. Why? They know. Trump voters know who and what he is. They're not stupid. They just are more upset about the system than they are about Trump. You see, Trump is the Grinch of their grievance. He hates what and who they hate, and they believe he is their best chance to disrupt it all. And that's what it is. It's not that they're deplorables. It's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're all bigots. None of that is the case. It's that they are disgusted by what too many of us dismiss. And Trump has capitalized on that. And that is the explanation of what Harris is up against. Harris is part of the administration. And the administration is getting blame, in part because it's the incumbency, part because Biden and now Harris have both not told their story as well as they could have. Biden also seemed to be a case of the truth of his frailty being hidden. Another example of the game of how politics is played. And Harris seems to have been given this nomination as opposed to earning it, and it reeks of being rigged. Now, if the party's okay with it, then everyone should be okay with it because the party's just a club. You know, we treat them like institutions of our democracy. They're not. They're just a tradition. We don't have to have them. We don't have to have just two. We don't have to let them dominate our process. But we do, and you don't hear anything about it because all of the players are in the parties. That's another advantage that Trump has. He's clearly an outsider because nobody likes him. So he's made that a strength. And also, to be fair, the Democrats have a tougher lift than Trump does, even as incumbents, which usually goes in favor of keeping an election, which is why so many presidents have won a second term. Enragement is easier than engagement. Enragement, pissing people off, making people angry, is easier than getting them to engage in a set of solutions. Always has been. That's why we all know the Greek word demagogue, and we don't know about any positive opposite to it. We don't know what the Greek word is for those who organize people on the basis of love and coming together. I don't know what that word is called. I guess you call him Jesus. Might be the word in Christianity. That's how we anthropomorphize it. But we don't have a positive opposite because that's what works. People will come together to commiserate about problems faster and easier than behind a solution. But know this, and this is where media matters. We need to take more interest in standing up for what we all know matters. Certainly, we got to give it more attention than what we decide to stand in during a storm just for effect. It reminded me of a common dig at lazy journalists. I've had this leveled against me on many occasions, but it is apropos and it has to do with a storm, so it's kind of thematically consistent. The job is not just to say, some say it's raining outside, some say it is not raining outside. The job is to then go and look out the window. That is true. And I believe that's what NewsNation is all about. That I'm going to tell you what everybody's telling you. And then I'm going to tell you what I think happens when you crunch what they're talking about. Okay? We convene with both sides. And then we look out the window and tell you what's out there. This disconnect is the fruit of the poisonous tree of party politics. We are at a point now where Democrats and Republicans, and look, I do believe it's fair criticism to say this is more true among Republicans than Democrats, especially because of Trump and his cult of personality. The Democrats don't have a figure like him. I think it's more true about the right, but they have their own versions of reality. And I watched a major outlet go through the data that I'm about to give you, an anchor and a correspondent. And they were reading out these competing propositions as if they were equivalents, like you can believe either of these things. And almost all of them are matters of fact that could have been adjusted in the real time. And they didn't adjust any of them. And I realized this is where we are. It's not even worth the effort for them. But it is the effort, and it is worth it here. Hurricane relief. The proposition that hurricane relief funds are going to people impacted by the hurricanes. Helene, Milton. Harris voters, 90% of them believe that. Trump voters, 35%. Only 35% of Trump voters believe that FEMA is giving money to the storm victims. Why? Because Trump and co. have been spinning it and perverting the reality and playing with the $750 number like that's all the money that you can get. And what else have they been doing? Saying that Harris, a vice president, last time I checked, they do nothing but hope the president doesn't pass, right? But Harris is now responsible for everything. In a way I never remember Mike Pence being. You're getting played. The job here is to tell you you're getting played, okay? They are saying that that money went to who? Illegal migrants, right? So what do you see in the numbers? Do Harris voters believe that? 10%. Trump voters, 65% believe something that is not true. Storm funds were not diverted to those people. Congress, including Republicans, apportioned the money that way. So blame them if you don't like the apportionment. If you don't like these migrants getting money, blame Congress. It wasn't stolen from FEMA. 65% of Trump voters believe it was. Can you believe that? Certainly, probably true. 83% of Trump voters. Here's what FEMA says. No money diverted from disaster response. FEMA's disaster response efforts and individual assistance is funded through the Disaster Relief Fund. It's dedicated to disaster efforts, nothing else. That's the fact. Facts don't matter. It's all feelings. The condition of the U.S. economy. Now, this one, I'm more lenient on. Why? Feel. It's feel. Grocery prices, gas prices, insurance prices, rent prices, mortgage prices are all up, right? That sucks. And that's enough. So you're going to see it. Harris voters think the economy is good or bad? Good, 66%. Trump voters, good, 12. Why? Because that's about politics of persuasion. I don't have the same problem with it. But I do once you get into the indicia. How? Stock market versus the beginning of the year. Is it higher or lower right now? Harris voters, 50% say it's higher. Trump voters, 36% say it's higher. Is it lower now than the beginning of the year? Harris voters, only 7% say it's lower. Trump voters, 16%. About the same, not sure, almost half of voters for both sides. I mean, look at your damn phones. At least pretend to be critical thinkers. All you have to do is Google it. The S&P 500, the Dow have scored record highs this year since the beginning of the year. It's a Google away. I don't know anything you don't. I just care enough to know. And so should you, because these people are lying to you for advantage. That's what they're doing. Let me have the next one. They have all these dates and numbers, but you don't care. I'm telling you, it's higher than it was at the beginning of the year. Please go check. Show me I'm wrong. The jobs report of the past month. Were jobs added? Harris voters, 62% yes. Trump voters, 36% yes. Were jobs lost? Trump voters say 28%. You see, they default to what Trump tells them, which is that everything is worse. Everything is worse. Well, what's the truth? The U.S. economy added jobs, okay? I think it was 254,000. Will it be adjusted later? Yeah. Up or down? I don't know. Usually down, but we'll see. In September 2024, it was 250,000. I think the estimate was like 150,000. Now, here's a good one. The number of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border increasing. Trump voters, 51%. I can't believe it's not higher. Harris voters, only 17. Come on. How can you not be paying attention to what's going on and not know that the situation at the border had gotten worse under the Biden administration? Now, is it as simple as Democrats suck? No. Trump was absolutely a deterrent, as was his administration. People knew coming here was going to end badly. Now, you can argue what kind of policy that is for the country, but that was the reality. Biden was seen as you're going to have an easier time. And that absolutely was part of why more came. Now, how they got processed and what the rules are, that's on Democrats. And they allowed it to be lax. But the truth is, in September of 2024, Border Patrol made about 54,000 apprehensions of immigrants attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border, okay? Now, that is the lowest monthly total of illegal crossing attempts since Biden took office, okay? Now, that means what? Well, the executive actions helped, enforcement helped, playing a little tricky numbers with the facts helps. Why? Because they're not counting gotaways. They're counting people who are apprehended, not all the people they hear racing by or that they can't get. The problem is much bigger than they ever record because they're not able to account for all of it. So things have gotten worse, but they're not the worst we've ever seen and all that. You see what I'm saying? So here's my point. This system that we're in can only lead us here. Every election is going to be about which of the two choices is worse. It is not going to change. Why? There is no incentive for the change. Nobody even bothers really trying to tell you what they're for anymore or what they're going to do. They got a better chance of you voting for them if they say, I promise I won't let the other side do anything if I get in. I won't vote for anything. They've got a better chance of getting in with a position of opposition than of any kind of plan to do anything about anything. And I think that sucks. And I think you deserve better, And I think we deserve better. And I think if it doesn't happen, this election is going to be an asterisk and a point of regret. I'll tell you one last thing, and then I've taken up enough time. But this had to be said, because I'm saying it to people all the time off TV. Why aren't I saying it on TV? I don't know that it matters that much who wins the election, because there's so much obstinance built in the system. If Democrats get in, the Republicans won't let them do anything. If Trump gets in and the Democrats have either house or any ability to influence it, they're not going to let him do anything. So I don't know. I think it's going to be more about rhetoric. I don't think that she's a communist. I don't think he's a despot in waiting. I don't believe it. I think they're boogeymen that you're being sold to be afraid. But I'm telling you, nothing changes if nothing changes. And if we keep closed primary processes and keep picking people who are allowed to just tell you the other side's worse and that's enough, we are stuck where we are. It can be 3 weeks out, it can be 3 months out. It's the same place. And I'll tell you what else was scary. I didn't even read you the numbers. You don't have people on either side who are going to be happy with the outcome of this election in terms of whether it's valid if they lose. On either side. Think about that. That's where we're headed.